Hey everybody, welcome to our podcast called Short Fuse for Fear. We do this every Halloween. This is our third annual podcast. Our philosophy is quality over quantity. We could do it every weekday, but you know what? It's just not really for us. Or maybe we're just lazy. I don't really know. So we decided this year we're going to talk about our favorite scary movies or our scariest movie we've ever seen. So we have two guests here, my friend Hope and my brother Jim. Hope, Jim, say hi to our gigantic audience.
Hi, audience.
Hello, gigantic audience. Hello.
Our audience numbers in the double figures, I'm pretty sure. Maybe triple figures.
Ooh, that's
depending how many times we listen to the podcast on YouTube to check everything. So we're going to talk about our favorite scary movies. Who wants to go first? Should I go first? Just to inspire people, I guess, whatever. Also, Janine is our tech person.
Hi,
again, as usual. And if I burp, it's because I'm drinking fizzy water. So I'll try not to burp into the mic. So we all picked our favorite scary movie or our scariest movie. So I got first dibs, so I got to pick The Exorcist. So I think Jim wanted to pick The Exorcist.
Yes.
He really wanted to pick it, but it's too late. It's my podcast, and it's my rules, Jim.
Okay.
And so The Exorcist, which is everyone knows The Exorcist, I think, right? What I found interesting about The Exorcist as I've gotten older is, I don't know if this is true, but this is my theory. You have to have been raised religious to be really scared by The Exorcist. So if you actually at one point in your life, especially when you watched it as a kid, you actually believed there was demons and Satan and Lucifer, you'd probably be extra scared. Because I have run into people that are like, I don't get it, I don't get why it's scary. So that's just my theory. Maybe at some point Jim and Hope can respond to that, but that's just my theory. The Exorcist, released in 1973, directed by William Friedkin, who people might know as the director of The French Connection, which I find pretty amazing. He made that movie before The Exorcist, and it won Best Picture. So I guess that was his next choice, to do The Exorcist, which is pretty amazing. Would also explain why it's such a good movie, based on a novel by William Peter Blatty. And here's the beginning of my fun facts, which is the book is based on an actual case of exorcism, although who knows if it was really exorcism, based on a case in 1949 in St. Louis, Missouri, involving Jesuits, just like in the movie, but it was a boy, not a girl, a 14-year-old boy. So it is supposedly based on a real case, but whether he was really possessed, who knows? It's also the first horror movie to be nominated for Best Picture Award, which is kind of interesting. But it didn't win, obviously. It made a bunch of money, and then probably kicked off the whole horror movie craze in the 70s, I would assume, right? I think Rosemary's Baby and The Omen, those kind of movies were made after The Exorcist. But
Rosemary's Baby was before.
Really? I didn't know that, though.
But The Omen was after.
Well, maybe there was something in the air in 1972 and 1973. That was my first fun fact. But here is another fun fact. That the voice, I never realized that the voice of possessed Reagan, or was it Regan or Reagan? Regan, is not Linda Blair. I always thought it was an electronically altered voice of Linda Blair. It's actually a actress named Mercedes McCambridge, who actually is kind of started as a radio actress and when there was a movie actress, but I assume she was pretty old when she did it. But so what I found out is, to prepare for that voice, she drank a lot of whiskey, smoked a lot of cigarettes, which I assume she was already a smoker, and weirdly enough, ate raw eggs. I'm not sure how that makes her voice messed up. And also, I don't know if this is true, but supposedly William Friedkin was famous for messing with his actors to get weird reactions. I read that he tied Mercedes Cambridge to a chair so she could understand what it was like to be like a restrained demon. That one I find hard to believe, but you never know. He did other weird things to his actors, supposedly, so it's possible, right? So that's one fun fact. But so this is a good story that Jim may or may not remember. My oldest brother John, I have three brothers, right? So my oldest brother John, I don't think it was the movie that scared him, but he read the book. And apparently he had a really bad nightmare, and he woke up our whole house screaming. He lived in the basement of my parents' house, and he was like screaming about Satan or whatever, get away from me. And then I think later on he was insisting that it wasn't just a bad dream, that it was actually a presence had visited him in the base.
Yeah.
He may still believe that he was visited by some kind of demon. Also, I feel like the big lesson is don't play with Ouija boards, because that's how it all starts. She plays with a Ouija board.
And then The Exorcist, does she?
Yeah, that's how it all starts.
I remember that.
She's in the basement, and she's making little sculptures, and her mom comes down.
That.
And she's like, all of a sudden her mom was like, what's this? And it's a Ouija board. And she's like, oh, I found it. She's like, where'd you find it? And she's like, in the closet. And she's like, well, it takes 2 people to play. And she says, well, yeah, I play with Captain Howdy.
Oh, that's right.
And her mom's like, he, who's Captain Howdy? She's like, my friend. And then and actually when I was reading about the original case that the book was based on, supposedly that one started with the Ouija board too. And supposedly the boy in the original case, that was probably not really exorcism, his aunt gave him a Ouija board. And he started playing with the Ouija board. That's how it started.
Should I have brought my Ouija board?
No. That are like, don't play with, well, not real people in real life, but like, in the media, like, that's how it starts. Like, don't play with Ouija boards. Yeah. You're gonna accidentally connect to a demon.
Yes.
And I think we were kind of raised that way too, as pretty strict Catholics. It's like, I don't even think my parents liked us watching horror movies because they're like, that's supernatural. Don't mess with it because you never know what you might let in. And
so I told my parents I went over to a friend's house overnight, and the father helped us play the Ouija board. And I told my parents about it, and I said, you probably shouldn't do that because it seems like good fun and everything. Because the whole idea is like, oh, we're talking to ghosts and stuff.
Yeah, you're asking,
a miner. The guy, that's what the father was doing. It's like, oh, look, it's an old miner named Jeb. And my mother said, you don't want to do that because you might contact the devil. And I was like, yeah.
Or ghost of a miner named Jeb.
Jeb, yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
That was
Jim, it's me, old Jim. Open up the closet door.
When we were
Jim, let me in. Anyways, that's my selection, The Exorcist. Who wants to go next?
Excellent.
I'll
go.
So there's a break between O'Leary's. Nobody wants too much O'Leary.
I'll be the break between O'Leary's. Excellent. I'll be a McDonald in between 2 O'Leary's.
Exactly.
Still full
You're
of Irish.
You're the palate cleanser.
Okay, so I was actually going to do Rosemary's Baby, but then Jeff mentioned, or I mentioned that The Hunger, and Jeff kind of pushed me in the direction of The Hunger. So I chose The Hunger. And getting back to vampire movies. It is one of my favorite all-time vampire movies because it's not done like any other vampire movie I've ever seen. They don't have fangs. They cut with little ankhs, which is the Egyptian symbol of life that they wear. That's how they cut their victims. And they don't live forever, as we soon discover with David Bowie's character. He starts aging. And so, just the way the movie's filmed, I just love it. It's just a series of, shots that cut from one scene to the next. And, the opening scene goes from Bauhaus singing Bela Lugosi's Dead in a nightclub to Catherine Deneuve and David Bowie in the nightclub scouting out their next victims, to Susan Sarandon, who's also in the movie, as a doctor studying aging in monkeys. And so it's really...
Wait, studying what?
Aging.
And monkeys?
In monkeys.
And monkeys?
In monkeys. She's using monkeys as to sort of find the aging gene and how sleep deprivation and increases aging. And so this opening scene, you don't know what the heck's going on, but you're introduced to all of the characters at once, which is really kind of cool. And then you find in the next opening scene is David Bowie, and he looks old and haggard, and he's not sleeping. So he seeks out Susan Sarandon because he's 200 years old. Catherine Deneuve is the woman who turned him into a vampire.
She's not old?
And she's not old. She's not aging, but he is. And so he seeks out Susan Sarandon's character to figure out why he's aging. He's aging I think they kind of allude to 5 years every minute in the movie. And there's a scene where he's in the waiting room waiting for her, and she thinks he's just some crazy crackpot trying to I don't know.
Does he... I watched it in high school and I haven't watched it since.
Yeah.
Does he turn Susan Sarandon?
He doesn't, no. But because,
I don't give anything away.
Because of his aging, she ends up I don't even know where to start. Okay, so going back to the waiting room. He's in the
Right,
waiting
okay.
room waiting for her. She's making him sit there because she thinks he's crazy
Right.
and just tells the front desk lady, let him wait a bit and stick him home on a bus or something. And he waits for 2 hours while she goes to some meeting, and then he chases her down in the hallway, and he has aged significantly in the 2 hours of him just waiting there, and she realizes that this guy's no joke. And so then she goes to his home to try and find him, and that's where she meets Catherine Deneuve, head vampiress, I guess,
Right.
and suddenly becomes the object of her affection because she knows that John, David Bowie's character, is... He's not dying. He doesn't die, actually. He just ages to the point that he can no longer function. So she keeps her past lovers
Right.
in coffins in an attic in this old house. So yeah, there's a scene that pans out, and there's like 6 or 7 different coffins kind of lined up in the
Who's the
corner.
director of The Hunger?
No, I don't know. I didn't look to see who the director was, actually.
Jim, look it up.
Quick, grab it, Google it.
Jim, look
Get
it
on
up.
there.
Everyone stop talking to me while I look it up.
I know it came out in 1983.
Yeah.
It's been
Is
a while
this,
since I've
is this
seen
a
it.
movie that frightened you or a movie that you just really liked?
I mean, look at me. I'm an aging goth. Wearing black, I've got blue hair. Goth never dies. But it is like the quintessential. If you're a goth kid, you love The Hunger. End of
Yeah, I
story.
remember in high school, there were a bunch of really cool goth kids, and they liked The Hunger. And I think I watched it once, and being like a 16-year-old male, I was like, I don't really get it. It's too artsy
It's very artsy.
for me as a 16-year-old. But yeah, I definitely remember thinking like, I should like this movie better because all the cool kids like it, but I couldn't get into it. I haven't watched it again. I should watch it again.
Yeah.
But yeah, it definitely is like classic early 80s goth movie that.
It was directed by Tony Scott. Who
That's,
Tony
yeah,
Scott.
that's right.
is Ridley
I knew
Scott's
Yeah, his brother.
His
He
brother,
did,
yeah.
True Romance.
He did.
Ah, that's a great movie.
Yeah, he
too.
did
I
True
love
Romance.
that.
He also, I think, did Top Gun.
Did he?
I never
Of course.
didn't actually
The
see
Hunger,
that.
Top Gun. 2 gay pilots. Just like Anne Rice vampire novels.
That's right.
Gay vampires.
Well, there's the same sex in The Hunger too, because Susan Sarandon
Oh, yeah,
and Catherine
right.
Deneuve. Well, the funny thing with The Hunger is it didn't actually do very well
No.
at all. And but I love it. I think it's great. Like I watched it the other day just to kind of refresh my brain cells, and I think it holds. I still think it
Yeah, I
holds
think
all these
people
years
still-
later. I think it's a brilliant
Yeah.
movie. It just didn't get the recognition it
It
deserves.
sounded
I
it was
think.
probably a little bit ahead of its time.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. I think a vampire movie, just in and of itself, doesn't demand that you be scared. It demands that you be sort of enchanted.
Yeah, I like vampires. I mean, I really do. It's just that they scare
Yeah.
me.
Okay, Jim, but what about...
But what about?
Yeah, what about Silence of the Lambs?
So let me tell you the reason why I picked this one, because I'm not a big fan of, because you would ask the one that frightened you the most, and I avoid scary movies. And part of it was because when I was growing up as a kid, nobody I knew wanted to go see a scary movie. And when I was growing up, the most common kind of scary movie was a slasher pick. And movies like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Friday the 13th and Halloween, it was like too scary for me, too disturbing. So imagine my happiness when I saw Silence of the Lambs in 1991, which I guess I'd gone with a girlfriend because they said, "Oh, this is a really good movie." I thought, I don't want to see these kind of movies. And so we saw it, and I really liked it. So it's not really a horror movie. It's a kind of a hybrid.
Yeah.
It's a suspense thriller /
Psychological.
hybrid movie. And talking about it and saying, I want to tell you more about it, it's kind of like saying, I'd like to tell you more about The Wizard of Oz or Casablanca.
Yeah.
You really need to see The Godfather if you haven't seen it. But it is, it's a very well-known movie. So I think that the thing that scares me about it, if it scares me, and it's not something that I will avoid watching, I'll watch it again and again and again, given the chance, is it deals with terror, the terror of extremely intelligent people in the world doing horrible things. Usually when I was growing up, or the basic idea is that you have supernatural beings which are kind of out of your control, or you can kind of dismiss them in your minds. Or you have criminals doing horrible things, like some of the
Right.
kind of grungy people catching the kids at the summer camp and stuff, but they're not too bright because you figure nobody's going to do anything terrible, for the fear of being caught. So since Silence of the Lamb deals with serial killers, incredibly intelligent serial killers who are smarter than you and smarter than me, it's very disturbing. And there's just this whole idea of people who are kind of out there wishing you horrible harm just because of something that you can't quite understand. I'm not a serial killer, caveat, and I can't imagine what that would be like, but
Why don't you try it?
I would like...
Just for
a
a
serial killer would convince us he's not a serial
That's
killer.
exactly what
Okay, literally,
Right?
literally, I thought when I was going to be on this podcast, I don't want to see too much bad about serial killers because I don't want someone listening to this and then picking us out.
I don't think
Nah.
we have a lot of serial killers in our audience.
I hope not. Yeah, I hope not.
You never know. 1 in 200 people in the United States is potentially
That's
serial.
possible.
Yeah.
Like
I
one
think
in
all the
200.
serial killers turned into mass shooters.
In terms of popular culture in film, they tend to use Ed
Gein, yeah.
Gein and Zodiac for their kind
Also,
of inspirations.
there's like the Ted Bundy killer.
It's,
like
it's
the psychopath.
Bundy and Dahmer now seem to be
Yeah.
sort of overriding anything.
The
Gein
sociopath that looks normal but is actually a serial killer. What about Jeb the prospector?
Jeb the Prospector.
Get off my claim! I want to bury a pickaxe in your head!
I think it was.
You kids, get out here!
I think that was in the book Silence of the Lambs.
Maybe.
I think the first 50 pages dealt with Jeb the prospector, 50 years before.
Okay, James, I have a question for you. It was interesting
Okay.
though. So I asked myself, I wonder why I'd be attracted to The Exorcist. I'd be like, probably because I was raised Catholic and I believed in all these supernatural forces, and I was really young when I watched it, so it made a big impression. And then Hope was saying that she was probably attracted to The Hunger, which is a very goth movie from the early 80s, and she was a goth in the early 80s. So Jim, then the next question would be, Jim, why do you think you are personally attracted to The Silence of the Lambs? Why that movie, out of all the universe of scary movies that could possibly attract your attention, why do you think that one was the big shiny object?
One way of putting it is I'm interested with serial killers, but not enough to study them too much. As opposed to what I always thought, like with slasher films, was just, to be honest with slasher films, because like Friday the 13th and stuff, I was a teenager at that time. And I was bothered by the fact, A, that these teenagers are being killed, and number two, that these kids were having a lot more fun than I was before they were being killed.
Killed for having sex.
I know, and like they're at a camp and they were so.
That's
I
what
thought
made the movie back then. Teens camp.
if there was a character like me in
Slasher.
like a Friday and 13th movie, not acting, but if like there was a character who was just like me, it would end up mostly on the cutting room floor. Because the producers would say, well, this character just didn't work out. It's too boring. But he would still be the third person killed.
Yeah, you was.
I would say you wouldn't end up
Because
on
he
the
would still
cutting
be
room
in the
floor.
crowd
Johnny
of people
Depp.
being killed. Exactly.
Johnny
and they
Depp.
say,
He
and,
gets killed like in the first 20 minutes of the movie or
right,
something.
and then
because he's a boring kid.
Right, and then people would talk about the movie later and say, that's one of the flaws of the film. Is that there's that guy, that really boring, unexciting guy, and they kill him, and it's all wrong.
You're not a boring. You weren't a boring, unexciting teenager
compared to the kids in Friday the 13th.
You could have been.
I
role.
agree. I wasn't like this gorgeous, drop dead, sexy, looks great in a two-piece bikini kid. I would have been like the first one or two girls.
I'll be the one trying to like join the gang in Friday the 13th and being rejected. Going like, no, go away, go file go clean the beds for the kids or whatever. You know what I mean? So they were having much more fun, kind of a fantasy camp world. I think,
and that's why you don't like slasher movies, because you thought that everyone was out there having fun, even though they got killed.
They got killed and they get killed. It's like a whole world of I don't and I really didn't like the idea, even as like a kind of conservative, again brought up Catholic kind of child. I knew there was something wrong with people being killed for having sex. I knew that was just wrong. Yeah, there was, and again,
you kill people for having sex.
Don't have sex, you'll get killed. Jason will come out of nowhere and
that
slash
doesn't work.
you.
That doesn't work for for the human race. And really, again, we're kind of grew up in a society in which there was a conflict between sexual behavior in terms of conservative and liberal, because we'd just gotten off the '60s, and it was like in all the media and everything. So it always kind of that felt a little retro to me. That I would think if you were doing a true kind of sexual revolution, Friday the 13th, you would have people who were like protesting kids having sex who are getting killed by Jason. But it wasn't. So anyway, so I guess that's what I'm saying is that it's an ability to see the darkness, to experience some of it, but kind of be at a safe distance
Got it.
from it.
You don't get too involved.
You don't get too involved, and there's still heroes in it.
I want to get involved though. I want to get so scared that I can't
See,
go to the
I
bathroom.
don't like that. I don't like that.
I wanted to go to summer camp, and my mom wouldn't let me. Why? Because she watched Friday the 13th.
Is that real? Is that a true story?
True story.
Wow.
Yep. I wanted to go to summer camp, and my mom and dad. I remember when they went to go see Friday the 13th. I wanted to go. I'm
Now,
like, I wanted to go.
you
They're
know
like,
how
you
I
can't
feel
just.
about
Yeah, you
seeing
want to see
serial
that? You
killer.
don't want to see that coming back. I
You
wanted
should
to
just
go.
say, "Look, Mom, I promise I won't have sex, and if I don't have sex, I won't get killed."
Well, I would have been 10 or 11 at the time when I was asking to go to summer camp.
She must have been really influenced by horror movies.
I hadn't seen Friday the 13th yet.
Yeah.
I didn't see Friday the 13th until we got HBO, which I would have been 14 or 15, I guess.
But actually, you know what? We got to wrap up. It's an hour, and we can't possibly edit down. The longer we record, the more work we have to do. Anyways, thanks to Hope and Jim for joining us, and thanks to Janine for being the tech person, and thanks again to Jillian for inspiring the name of this podcast. So I hope you guys enjoy listening to us talk about our favorite scary movies, and hopefully we'll do another one next Halloween. All right?
Happy Halloween!
Happy Halloween!
Bye!
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Janine, this is your chance to interject. Anything you want to say before we wrap things up, Janine? Behind the screen.
This is a great podcast.